Do I like living with my own artwork? No, not normally. I have thousands of square feet of decorative finishing that I've done over the years. I've had to learn to live with my mistakes in those realms. Decorative finishing is all hand applied usually, or with a trowel or a brush, but a lot of times it's a lot of hand work, and I can't produce like a machine. So flaws and blemishes becomes beauty marks. And I have noticed that my clients love the beauty marks more than me getting it closer to a machine look. But I have a hard time with it because I see them all when I walk into a room, and it's just kind of like you have to learn to forgive yourself because you did the best you could under the circumstances, but it's not flawless. It's the twist of the hand, it's the texture, it's the pressure, it's all the things that go on with your fingers and your hands, and all of that stuff creates what it is. And so it's the same way in painting smaller. There's good days in painting that are amazing, and you want to stay in that zone. So like many painters, you want to do a project. You may not want to go to bed at night because you don't know how you're going to be tomorrow. You don't know if it's going to turn out, if you're going to mess it up, or if you're going to continue to stay in zone. So I know a lot of us artists, we continue in the zone until it's completed. We might fall down in exhaustion by the time we're done, but the reality is we want to keep it in the zone. And the hardest part that I find, which is something that I'm adapting to as I get older, is knowing when to stop. You can overwork anything. You can overwork finishes. You can overwork a room. You can overwork a painting. Whatever you're creating, you can overwork it. You can clean it up so much, but then it doesn't feel, it feels mechanical. You have to leave some of the grit into the work. And I think that's important. So it's knowing when to stop. When I was younger, I can remember my mom painting. She had what was called, she painted what would be considered tacky now. She painted on velvet. It was called Artex, and it's actually kind of hard to find those now. But they're more like a paint by number, and all of us kids love to watch. And we like to play in it. So that's probably my earliest time remembering painting that was taking place. My parents were always do-it-yourself type people, so we were always, if we wanted something painted in the house to change the color of a bedroom or the living room or whatever, we were always part of the process. Painting walls, which is where much of my business has come from. That's one of the reasons my paintings are so big a lot of times, because I'm used to painting walls. As far as art goes, we were always, our house was a house that
we were allowed to develop in our house. You sat at the dining room table or the kitchen table, and we would draw, and we were allowed to paint and paint, um, and all of us children loved to do that. So my brother liked to draw airplanes and cars, and I liked always to draw buildings. When I was 16, we lost everything. Um, I can remember being called into the principal's office. I was a good kid, so for me to be called into the principal's office was a scary situation for me. And when I got there, my brother was there, my sister was being collected, and we found out one of our neighbors was coming to get us. My parents weren't home yet, they were away. We had lost our home to a fire, and we had lost everything. The only thing that we had was what we were wearing that day. That started a series of I was always interested in architecture, but that's where my love for interior design came about. Um, my mom ended up hiring an interior designer to help her get through that process, to speed that process and to make it work. So that's when I had my first real experience with that part of the world. Loved it. That's one of the reasons that I went into interior design. I always loved it. I always loved architecture. And the magazines I would read was like Architectural Digest from front to cover, including including the advertising. I just loved it. But it wasn't my first love at that particular time. I was also studying music, and I expected myself to go into music because that's what I really loved. And interior design was actually plan B. I had signed up at the end of high school. I wanted to go to a particular school that taught music. And for 6 months, I waited for that acknowledgement for me to step into that world. And I was declined. And it was like, what am I going to do now? Because it's the only place I wanted to go. And it was getting too late because the semesters were coming, school was coming. And so I did plan B, and plan B was interior design school. And at that particular time, I got in, and I excelled in it. And I was a straight A student, and it's like it took me by surprise because it was plan B. It wasn't plan A. One of my collectors said to me about probably 10 years ago, they were collecting a certain artist's work, and I said, I can paint in that style. And they said, don't paint in your own. Basically, stay in your own lane, Barry, because it's good to mix. It creates, so when you have mine and another artist and maybe 3 or 4 artists in an environment, and you add textile type work and you add all of these things together, it creates a beautiful presentation of makes it very interesting, where I wouldn't even want to go into a gallery or even into a home that was just Barry. It becomes flat, and it doesn't matter if it's got my best work in it. It still would be flat versus something that's mixed. And I think that's important. And when I design for people and we talk about art, that's one of the things that I like to talk to them about, is bring in a mix. Don't just collect one artist, collect multiple artists, because it creates interest. If you need continuity, go with texture, go with color, go with those type of things, but you don't need to make it the artist as your flat line. Don't go there. If you have this artist and that artist, maybe you need to blend it into a room that, is certain color tones or contrast tones. You can do that, and it creates so much interest for a room. And I think that's extremely important for an artist, to be able to be with its peers, be accessible, available, show up for the party with, there's 10 other artists in the room, 5 other artists, 3 other artists. Well, it doesn't matter. It just makes it a beautiful environment to be in. Mm-hmm. As far as the collection for people that collect me, I have horses on Wall Street. I have Native American Indians in Nashville. I mean, it changes. It's, it's unique to see who collects what, where, why, and how. And you'll always be surprised. You'll be surprised where it's going. My last commission was Marilyn Monroe. It went to New Jersey. I didn't expect that. I mean, one of my friends was teasing me. He said, "You go from painting the Passion of Christ to pinup girls all in the same stroke." And it's like, yeah, that's probably true, but it just makes a unique storyline. I never thought I'd be painting Marilyn Monroe. I never thought that I would be creating such a thing. Not in a million years. So I look at that and say, okay, is there other ones I want to do? I don't know. I'm thinking about it. So we'll see.